Part 1 of Two Cumberland Ballads by John Stagg. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Hermit of Rockcliffe, a legendary tale, in 4 cantos. Canto 1. The evening lowered, the wind blew hard, and furious roared the tide. Fast homeward to his humble shed the weary ploughman hied, and madly Esk and Eden ran, swollen by the falling rain, when Alfred led fair Imogen, bewildered o'er the plain. On either side a river roared, dismayed they walked between, for neither to the right nor left one glimpse of light was seen. But, lost amid surrounding gloom, with unknown steps they sped, unconscious of the way they went, and stupefied with dread. At length, when sinking with their fears, they spied a glimmering light, which seemed at no great distance thence, and cheered their longing sight. Young Alfred called with all his might, the rocks re-echoed round, an answering voice returned the call, with kind inviting sound. 'Twas Edmund, Hermit of the Hill, in Rockcliffe known of yore, whose hospitable cottage still received the wandering poor. Once noted was this holy man for piety and prayer, t'instruct the blind and aid the weak was his peculiar care. The wandering pair pursued the light, and soon attained the hill. The friendly hermit at his cell received them with good will. For them, with heaps of added turf, he mends his homely fire, their sufferings and their wants to soothe appeared his sole desire. With frugal but with wholesome food the table soon was spread, and whilst they ate their kindly host prepared their humble bed. And now, refreshed, the cheerful group in various converse joined, the angry storm that howled without no more the pilgrim's mind. The cautious hermit then began to ask the youthful pair, by what misfortune or mischance so late they travelled there, when thus young Alfred soft replied, Most reverend father, wait with patience, and th' eventful tale to you I will relate. Since Bannockburn's unhappy day, the Scots but ill at rest, of England's weakness well aware, the borders sore infest. Poor Cumberland, the most exposed, has felt in many a fray. Our towns they burn, our flocks and herds by force they drive away. 3 days are scarcely past and gone, since a ferocious band of wild freebooters from the north invaded Cumberland. Through Brough the bold banditti sped, rude rapine marked their course, to Orton and to Dalston next, for none could check their force. As in their unresisted route before them all recoil, and of our cattle and our corn they swept a mighty spoil. To brave Sir Barnard's hall they marched, which undefended lay, and his fair daughter Imogen they captive bore away. Alarm and horror loudly rang throughout the ravaged land, for no collected force had we these ruffians to withstand. At length the neighbouring barons heard, enraged their powers they rose, and forth their numerous vassals led, their progress to oppose. But when the Northerns understood that Cumbria's chieftains led an army forth to check their course, to Scotland back they sped. By Bowness bent their tardy march, their plunder went before, and fording through the Solway, soon regained the Scottish shore. Nor long behind the English force in idle dalliance stayed, but urged by fury and revenge, with speed for Scotland made. Nor long we vainly sought the foe, who slowly onward wound, and sore encumbered by their spoils, had gained but little ground. At our approach, like base-born slaves their plunder they forsook, nor far the cowards we pursued, but all the spoil retook. All save the lovely Imogen, who, held by ruffian force, a fierce freebooter, screaming, bore away upon his horse. With love and vengeance doubly fired, I urged my nimble steed, And turning by a nearer path, pursued them with all speed. Soon the bold ravisher I charged, for, by one deadly blow, My falchion trench'd his sever'd crest, and lifeless laid him low. Half dead with horror and despair, the rescued maid I bore, Triumphant to the place, where late we had encamped before. But how was I surprised and vexed to find our party gone, And we, amidst a hostile land, unsuccour'd left alone. The western sun o'er Criffle's brow glanced his departing ray. What should be done? The foe was near, and dangerous was delay. Unknown, unaided, and forlorn, we left the fated place, And back to Cumbria by the route we went, our way retrace. But as athwart the moorland waste the way was ill to find, With moss and quagmire interspersed, I left my horse behind. With Phoebus' last departing ray we forded through the Sark, But ere we well had passed the Esk 'twas grown completely dark. When quite bewildered in despair we traced the sandy coast, And, but for your directing light, had certainly been lost. But since your hospitable cell a kind asylum lends, Our future gratitude, I hope, shall make you full amends. Our home, if Heaven permit, we may reach with tomorrow's light, And Imogen again shall glad an anxious father's sight. But who art thou, adventurous youth? The reverend hermit cried. What is thy lineage? To what house art thou by birth allied? For if from actions aught we may of pedigree divine, Thine would bespeak thee of a class above the vulgar line. To whom young Alfred, courteous youth, thus modest made reply, Of no distinguished high descent or family am I. In fact my birth is quite obscure, my origin is low, That I the parents never knew to whom my being owe. A father's kindness I ne'er felt, nor shared a mother's fears, For in Sir Barnard's hall I've lived from my most infant years. Alas, my son, the hermit cried, how like my own thy fate! But may it never be thy lot to know my wretched state. For mine has been a life of woe, eventful as severe, From my nativity till now, that you behold me here. And since the ardent flame of love so plainly is displayed, That in thy youthful bosom burns towards that beauteous maid, Perhaps my more than common tale to thee may useful prove, And caution thee to shun those ills that spring from misplaced love. Though the recital may produce to memory new-born pain, Yet for your vantage will I tell my tale of woes again. The Hermit's Tale, Canto 2. Child of obscurity, and doomed through life to feel distress, My infancy commenced in woe, nor age has suffered less. As on a fair autumnal morn Sir Michael of the Moor arose to join the cheerful chase, He found me at his door, within a wicker basket stowed, And wrapped with curious care, a medal, pendant from my neck, the name of Edmund bare. But none could tell who brought me there, or guess from whence I came, The only information left was barely of my name. The knight he took me to his hall, and gave me to his wife, And, with a parent's fondness, watched my helpless infant life. Nor in my education aught, or pastime ever spared, For I, in common with his own, each fond indulgence shared. Meanwhile, brought up with fostering care, to manhood fast I grew, Each manly art and exercise accustomed to pursue. Full fast, full fleet, without alloy, my years of youthhood run, For, till 14, that I supposed myself Sir Michael's son. Indeed, his kindness and his care so taught me to believe, And, till the fatal truth I knew, I ne'er had cause to grieve. But when I luckless came to know the obscureness of my name, My youthful ardour fled, and left my cheek suffused with shame. In solitude I mourned my lot, In silence sighed my woe, And all from Providence I sued Was, but myself to know. With kindly care Sir Michael strove my sorrows to suppress, And each amusing effort tried To soothe my sad distress. 1,000 arts to lull my grief My generous patron tried, And wheresoe'er the Baron went, I still was by his side. The brave Sir Guy de Morville once, So chanced it to befall, My noble foster father Had invited to his hall. As to promote my happiness Seemed chiefly his intent, So, since the visit promised fair, To Brough with him I went. Sir Guy de Morville was a knight, Of whom the world might say, That England's realm a braver peer Possessed not in his day. The grandson of the brave Sir Hugh, Our second Henry's friend, By whom imperious Becket met His just but tragic end. Near Brough his stately castle stood, Magnificent in show, Whose lofty towers defiance waved To each invading foe. Around his numerous vast domains Extended widely lay, For half of spacious Cumberland Confessed his mighty sway. Though far around his manors spread, Though hosts his subjects were, His hospitality excelled His opulence by far. With my indulgent patron here Right courteously I fared, And in the pleasures of the place An ample portion shared. Each kindly striving to remove The pressure of my thought, Whilst every new successive day New entertainment brought. Sometimes along the spacious march We chased the nimble deer, Or else in angling spent the day On Eden's waters clear. Or sometimes with the baying hounds The neighbouring woods explore, And from the sheltering thicket drive The fierce and bristly boar. Thus whilst at Brough each coming day Brought scenes of fresh delight, And balls and various modes of mirth Concurr'd to cheer the night. By these my wonted gloom appear'd To be dispell'd apace, And gay hilarity and mirth Establish'd in its place. I now had reach'd my 18th year, And was by all confess'd To be of an engaging mien, And person too possess'd. But conscious of my birth obscure My views had stinted scope, And timid diffidence repell'd The very hand of hope. It chanced one night the gay Sir Guy An entertainment made For our amusement, which comprised A ball and masquerade. Full many a lord and lady came In gallant garb and gay, Nor could Carnarvon's court then boast Of splendour more display. Their blithest airs the minstrels played, The vaulted roofs resound, With mirthful measures through the hall The dancers shift around. The laugh, the song, their heartfelt joy Full easy might betray, Nor discontinued were those sports Until the dawn of day. Amongst the ladies that were there Was one of graceful mien, Her noble stature and her air Might well have graced a queen. Though love as yet had never played Around my youthful heart, Yet now I made myself assured I felt its poignant dart. The more I danced, the more I talked With this engaging dame, The more convinced was I my breast Had caught the furious flame. With dancing tired and warm with wine, I pressed the lovely fair Awhile to leave the busy train And breathe the open air. All yielding to my utmost wish, She left the jocund throng, And through the garden's fragrant walks Well pleased we strolled along. At length we reached a secret bower Amid the thickening grove, Where we indulged in each excess Of fond but lawless love. With strange emotions back I led My charmer to the hall, And with the jovial group resumed The pastimes of the ball. But what confusion in my face Must every eye have known, Had not my mask concealed the blush Which conscience would have shown. At length the rosy tinge of morn Illumed the mountains' heads, The weary wantons quit their sports, And yawning seek their beds. I to my wonted chamber went, But here I found no rest, The mingled pangs of guilt and love So occupied my breast. Long ere the castle bell had rung, My pillow I forsook, and to the arbour in the grove a wistless saunter took. In contemplation rapt profound my hapless fate I mourned, whilst in my heart the torch of love with fiercer ardour burned. Should she, the object of my love, once come to know my state, full well I knew that all my hopes in her must terminate. My face, assisted by my mask, I carefully concealed, certain with shame to have been repulsed if that had been revealed. But then, the cause that favoured me now added to my woe. It hindered me from knowing her whom most I wished to know. Back to the castle I repaired and entered by the hall. The company at breakfast sat. I looked, I noticed all. But all in vain inquiry proved, or passion made me blind. For her the most for whom I sought, her nowhere could I find. But now the cruel fatal time for our departure come, it followed that I must of course attend Sir Michael home. With doleful heart and downcast eye I left the place behind, while burning love and black despair united in my mind. No lover ere before, thought I, thus cruelly was crossed, to find a treasure, and the same in finding to be lost. For her in secret long I pined, and search as useless made, till time that conquers every ill, that too at length allayed. Though ocean into mountains rise when tortured by the wind, in time the conflict will subside, so fares it with the mind. Sir Michael's kindness to my cares the best of balsams proved, and time compelled me to forget that I had ever loved. Full 16 years I calmly passed in philosophic joy, nor e'er one incident occurred that quiet to annoy. Not but a thought of former times would sometimes fill my head, but like a recollected dream, soon these ideas fled. About this time to Lowther Hall by old Sir Michael sent, all gaily mounted and arrayed, with lightsome heart I went. Through Inglewood my journey lay, a forest long and drear, but clad in armour cap a pie, my bosom felt no fear. But ere I had proceeded far along the lonely course, 4 villains from a thicket rushed and dragged me from my horse. Resistance little could avail, all courage was in vain. They robbed and stripped me of my clothes, and left me in the lane. Unaided thus and closely bound, sore bruised in sad dismay, exposed amid the winter's storms, beneath a hedge I lay. When Providence, whose guardian eye still watches our distress, sent Lancelot of Edenside my sufferings to redress. Assisted by his faithful train, he raised me from the ground, and with officious kindly care tied up each bleeding wound. Then raising me all deadly pale, they placed me on a steed, and Armthwaite Castle being near, there carried me with speed. Here such attention was employed essential to my case, that long I lingered not, their care recovered me apace. Yet though their kindest efforts served my rankling pains to heal, rescued from those, I was but doomed severer pains to feel. Within the castle lived a maid, unknown to public fame, with every female beauty blessed, and Bertha was her name. Yet doubtful was the maid's descent, her lineage so unknown, that of her kindred no one knew, unless the knight alone. I saw fair Bertha, and the sight proved fatal to my rest. I loved, nor by each effort tried that love could be suppressed. I saw, I loved, nor aught could soothe the fever of my soul, nor time, nor distance, nor resolve the passion could control. With time that conquers common cares, I found the flame increase, and absence render more acute the pain 'twas meant to ease. With ardent suit I wooed the fair, I won her virgin heart. She soon confessed her bosom bore with mine an equal part. What joy the declaration gave, no language can define, and lovers only can conceive the transports that were mine. Sir Lancelot I next addressed, and each persuasion tried, for his permission to espouse fair Bertha as my bride. With answers quite equivocal the knight my suit amused, nor ever plainly gave consent, nor perfectly refused. Tired with evasion, fired with love, I pressed the lovely fair to leave the castle, and with me one common fortune share. The yielding maid approved the plan, and in the silent night to an adjacent church unseen we took our lonely flight. The reverend father of the place soon tied the Gordian knot, and now I deemed fair Bertha mine, all happiness my lot. Next day the convent we forsook, and furnished with a guide, to my kind foster-father's hall I led my blushing bride. The good old man approved my choice, but blamed the rash event, yet promised speedily to gain Sir Lancelot's consent. But now 'twas needful to proceed on some new mode of life. Besides myself, I had to care for a deserving wife. Nor stopped Sir Michael's kindness here, in friendship ever warm, for with a father's care for me he stocked a neighbouring farm. To husbandry accustomed, I each labour could pursue, and though but young, fair Bertha, she the arts of dairy knew. Here, happy as the tuneful lark, 3 joyous years I passed, without one intervening care my happiness to blast. Man's chiefest blessing, cheerful health, in exercise I found, and heaven propitious, with success my various labours crowned. Amidst fatigue, my Bertha's smiles the tedious hours beguiled, and ere our 2nd year was past, she blessed me with a child. My happiness was now increased, full lovely was the boy, our equal cares the infant shared, bestowing equal joy. The Hermit's Tale continued. Canto 3. But how transient and how vain is every human hope! The real pleasures of this life have but a little scope. Uncertain of his future fate, man does but little know, nor fears misfortune mid success till fate extends the blow. So 'twas with me. The morn of life, unclouded, gaily passed. The genial outset made me hope it might for ever last. Placed as I thought upon the top of fortune's giddy wheel, I soon was destined, by just heaven, a sad reverse to feel. It chanced upon a holiday, by household business sent, with cheerful and unheeding heart, to fair Carlisle I went. When, as I through the cloisters passed, intent upon my way, I heard a female call aloud who beckoned me to stay. I turned aside towards the grate, that I her will might learn, but as she wore the sacred veil, her face could not discern. I thought I recognised the voice, but could not fancy where. That languid seemed, what I supposed the effect of pious care. Draw near, the reverend matron said, nor apprehensive be. I have a question to propose, which you must answer me. Were you not at De Morville's Hall some 20 years ago, and knew you not a lady there? Now tell me, aye or no? Like lightning bursting from a cloud, the question shook my brain. I humbly answered, Holy Dame, denial were in vain. Yes, I was there. O heaven, that now I had it not to say. The pleasures of that night produced me many a painful day. Now mark me well, the lady cried, as truth I shall report, since fallacy, I ween, would ill with my profession sort. 'Twas I with whom that fatal night you wandered through the grove. 'Twas I with whom beneath the bower you held illicit love. So intimate as we had been, so fond the night before, I make no doubt you were surprised you ne'er beheld me more. But when the reasons you shall hear that caused this conduct strange, whate'er your opinions then, must now for others change. The noise and tumult of the night had so deranged my head, a burning fever the next day confined me to my bed. Nor till a month elapsed, or more, had I my health regained. And then, alas, to know, new cause of grief remained. my health restored, from room to room impatiently I flew. Of all I eagerly inquired what had become of you. But each research successless proved, inquiry was the same, since none of all our household train had ever learned your name. In pensive melancholy wrapped I spent a tedious year, nor tidings during all that time of you could ever hear. Worn out at length, with peevish spleen, with all the world at strife, I suddenly resolved to change my dissipated life, and the remainder of my days to dedicate to heaven, in hopes for faults and follies past, by prayer to be forgiven. With this resolve I left the world and sought this sacred place, and have, I hope, a part obtained of mercy and of grace. Full vicious was my former life, I own the shameful truth, yet penance hath, I hope, expunged the errors of my youth. Near 20 years within these walls of solitude I've dwelt, but ne'er in all my former life such real pleasure felt. But say, of all this lapse of time, where has your dwelling been? That from that hour I ne'er could see, whom most I would have seen. Since that ill-fated night at Brough, how have you led your life? Have you a family? If so, pray tell me who's your wife. By accident I saw you pass, your form I thought I knew, and, as I long had wished, I now resolved to question you. For though secluded from the world, howe'er the fault you blame, my heart still formed a vacant wish at least to know your name. Dear object of each youthful hope, cried I, what would avail the recollection of those woes reviving in the tale? But since 'tis you that have required of me the painful task, it is but reason I recite what you've a right to ask. Betimes in the subsequent morn of that ill-fated night, I rose and sought, but sought in vain, my heart's, my soul's delight. I asked of every one I met, unknowing whom I sought. Enquiry quite successless proved, description served me naught. Your face, you well may recollect, I had not seen before, hid by the visor which that night, like all the rest, you wore. This naturally precluded me, whatever might ensue, or wheresoe'er we chanced to meet, from ever knowing you. De Morville and his friendly hall in deep disgust I left, the thoughts of you alone my soul of every joy bereft. Sunk in despair, a lingering year for you I sighed and pined, whilst night and day your fancied form was present to my mind. At length the sad conflicting storm subsided by degrees, my mind began to reassume its former wonted ease. Amusements now I sought, amidst the circles of the gay, in beauty's charms new transports found, new pleasures in each day. At length a female gained my heart, though quite unknown to fame, bred with a knight on Edenside, fair Bertha was her name. Graced with each charm that heaven bestows, I sought her for my wife, and now 3 years with her I've lived, the happiest in my life. As for myself, the humble truth I candidly shall own, I am a foundling, and of course my family unknown. Left with Sir Michael of the Moor, famed for his courtesy, and Edmund is the name they say my parents left with me. Whilst I my narrative concise in humble style pursued, I marked strong agitation shook the lady as she stood. While still suppressed, the struggling groan did inward grief betray, but when I came to close the tale, she shrieked and swooned away. The holy sisterhood, alarmed, to her assistance run, and from the earth with kindly care they raised the fainting nun. All motionless a while she lay, as in the arms of death, till kind restoratives applied recalled the fleeting breath. Thus, life recovering, to the train she said, "My friends, retire, since with this man an interview in secret I require. It is essential to the peace of my departing soul, which heaven now calls, nor fate itself the summons can control. The holy Father Abbot, he our conference shall attend, for I've important things to speak ere I shall make an end. So said, to their respective cells the female choir withdrew, while I was introduced those seats of solitude to view. A man with venerable mien, the holy abbot, came, and both of us our stations took, attendant on the dame. Upon a lowly couch she lay, her face all pale and wan, and gently raising up her head, thus faltering she began. Good father, oft my youthful crimes I have confessed to you, but the amount of half my guilt till now I never knew. Unprecedented are my sins, and of that damning kind, that scarce a hope with me remains that I should mercy find. Thou, Edmund, first of all my crimes, with thee my guilt begun. Nay, be not weak, but hear me out, to know thou art my son. Thy sire King Edward was, the first, a prince of high renown. To him I bore thee in my youth, before he bore his crown. When born I sent thee to be laid before St. Michael's gate, but, as the servant ne'er returned, I never learnt thy fate. For 20 more successive years my life I lewdly spent, nor e'er of reformation thought, on pleasure solely bent. But that night, that fatal night, all my offences crowned, the just reward of guilty lust in pregnancy I found. Ashamed, for even vice has shame when it affects our pride, I meant, by sending off the babe, my infamy to hide. With old Sir Lancelot she lived, brought up in rural life. Her name was Bertha, and my son, that daughter, is thy wife. Thy wife, thy sister, and thy child, all 3 combined in one. A double incest, guiltless thou, that guilt is mine alone. As when from some uncommon dream of horror and affright a person chances to awake amid the gloom of night, the dreadful recollected scenes so frightened fancy shake, that for a while the dreamer doubts if yet he be awake. So 'twas with me, the wondrous tale which I but just had heard seemed so replete with horrid facts, so full of guilt appeared, that for a while, the eventful whole, I wist not what to deem, but hoped this revelation strange might only prove a dream. But when the frightful narrative I ventured to review, from every fact I felt convinced the whole was but too true. Strange palpitations shook my heart, my brain seemed whirling round, and of reflection quite bereft, I sunk upon the ground. Suspended life the abbot's care soon kindly did restore, and when I rose, 'twas but to learn my mother was no more. Stung with the anguish I endured, and each sad event past, imploring mercy from above, she sadly breathed her last. Tears and the power of utterance came at length to my relief, and loud around the convent walls re-echoed with my grief. The kind superior of the place, affected by my woe, by easy soft persuasion strove sweet comfort to bestow. At length the torrent of distress subsided by degrees, and slow the mind began to assume a sort of stupid ease. When thus I cried, there yet remains the hope to be forgiven, or how shall I acquitted stand before the throne of heaven? Labour, my son, the abbot cried, to lighten your distress. Though great eternal justice be, still mercy is no less. Yourself unconscious of the crime, no wilful guilt was yours, and prayer and penance, when unfeigned, forgiveness still secures. Then cease unnecessary grief, attend the word of truth, and let amended age atone the follies of thy youth. But tell me, reverend sire, said I, what was that mother's name, to whom I owe my being, and to whom I owe my shame? Of her but little have I known, yet was that knowledge such, that little, little as it was far, by far too much. Thy mother, quoth the courteous priest, as fitly should be known, Sir Guy de Morville's sister was, a knight of high renown. In Inglewood the Baron he a hunting went of late, but, being tumbled from his horse, met an untimely fate. And as the knight intestate died, your mother, Lady Jane, succeeded by her legal right to all the vast domain. Of all the charters, deeds, and rights, I solely am possessed, and now to you the whole resign, such was her last request. For this her last injunction was in solemn charge to me, and these her last and dying words, my heir let Edmund be. Sick as I was of all the world, and stupid with my woe, of what avail was wealth to me, what joy could wealth bestow? I left the writings in his hands, with bonds upon record, that if the barony I claimed, the whole should be restored. My mother's funeral being o'er, I bade the choir adieu, and homeward hied with heavy heart my anguish to renew. My trouble yet was to be told, my poor, my guiltless wife, and how must I perform the task, who loved her as my life? And yet the task must be performed, such seemed the will of heaven, or how could I my numerous crimes expect to have forgiven? At length I reached my once loved cot, the scene of soft delight. Now, alas, how sadly changed, how dreadful to my sight! Unused to be deserted thus, my Bertha chid my stay, and told how fearful she had been at this my long delay. What could I do? It must be done. The dreadful tale I told. I saw my Bertha's face grow pale, I felt her hand grow cold. The dire intelligence seemed more than nature could sustain. She wistful gazed me in the face, but ne'er replied again. Her tongue all utterance had forsook, her tears refused to flow, and down she sank upon her couch, convulsed in speechless woe. A burning fever on the morn confined her to her bed, and one short melancholy week beheld her with the dead. The grave of Bertha I bedewed with many a bitter tear, but still the hand of destiny, all cruel, stopped not here. For whilst attendant on her corpse I saw her to her tomb, a band of fierce freebooters had been pillaging my home. Lifeless and weltering in his gore my trusty servant lay. My child, my last remaining hope, the slaves had borne away. Quite maddened with my griefs, I cursed the hour that gave me breath, and nothing sought from heaven so much as for immediate death. Though yet but in the prime of life, life seemed to engage no more. I'd lost that heartfelt happiness time could never restore. So in the busy walks of men, resolved no more to dwell, I left my house and lonely sought the solitary cell. Here 17 lonely years I've passed in penitence and prayer, and to alleviate others' wants hath ever been my care. To read the lesson of my life unto a listening few, that from example they might learn such mischiefs to eschew. Canto 4. Now, fair befall my boding heart, the youthful Alfred cried. Some secret impulse whispers me that we must be allied. 'Tis just now 17 years ago, I've heard Sir Barnard say, a band of furious ruffians came by plunder drawn our way. The country round all flew to arms, nor any idle stood. The robbers fled, Sir Bernard he with all his train pursued, and ere they could repass the Esk, o'ertook th' encumbered foe, who fled and all their booty left, nor stood to strike a blow. Amongst the rest it was my lot on that eventful day to be retaken from the foe amongst their other prey. But no one there could aught impart of whom or whence I came, for I was then myself so young I scarce could lisp my name. Sir Bernard brought me to his hall and bred me up with care, where I with his own family a father's fondness share. What is thy name? The hermit cried, for now methinks I trace some recollected features stand depicted in thy face. When first Sir Bernard, quoth the youth, inquired my infant name, I lisped out Alfred, and since that have still retained the same. Besides, I learnt that at this time a mantle green I wore, with Edmund and with Bertha marked, which yet I keep in store. For haply, on some future day, said I, this may declare, through some auspicious accident, who my sad parents are. Come to my arms, the Hermit cried. Now are my wishes won. Thou art my Alfred, gracious heaven, yes, yes, it is my son. Mysterious are the ways of fate with blind and futile man, and yet the ways of Providence shall he pretend to scan. For when I thought in sorrow's course my life unchanged had passed, kind heaven in mercy brings my son to comfort me at last. Yes, yes, my Alfred, with his care, declining life shall bless. This moment's pleasure would o'erpay an age of past distress. But tell me, Alfred, Edmund said, who's she that's by thy side? Her bashful diffidence bespeaks that she is not thy bride. Beware, my son, mistaken love, avoid the dangerous snare, and from a father's lesson learn his sorrows to beware. The lovely Imogen she blushed, confusion tinged her cheek, but bound in bashfulness, the maid presumed not now to speak. When Alfred thus the reverend sage ingenuously addressed, Dear sire, no foul impressions need be harboured in your breast, for though in life's precarious ways an inexperienced youth, yet what I've hitherto advanced is nothing but the truth. The lady you behold with me is virtuous as she's fair, and daughter to Sir Bernard is, in fact, his only heir. I told you she was forced away by that unfeeling band, and that I rescued and restored her by my single hand. All this is true that I've declared, for falsehood I despise. Till now a parent I ne'er knew, then what should I disguise? Fair Imogen, 'tis true, I love, nor has the lovely dame regardless noticed my concern, but felt a mutual flame. Though conscious of my state obscure, my flame I long concealed, nor till her kind approval gained that passion e'er revealed. Child of obscurity and want, what madness should I prove, had I a declaration made of my ambitious love? But now a ray of brighter hope pervades my humble mind, and fairer prospects crowd to view, since I a father find. With this avowal of his love, ingenuous as I ween, a deeper dye suffused the cheek of lovely Imogen. For though unconscious of the flame that preyed on Alfred's heart, her breast reciprocal had felt, for him, an equal smart. Thus either lover long had lived, though equally unknown, and, but for accident, that love they neither would have shown. In him 'twas diffidence alone that could the flame conceal, whilst modesty in her forbade the passion to reveal. But say, my son, the Hermit cried, with all thy smothered love, hast thou a hope, Sir Bernard's heir, that passion can approve? A blush diffuses o'er her cheek that more bespeaks her heart than all the specious figures used in elocution's art. Say, Imogen, if Alfred were thine equal in estate, could thou, with good Sir Bernard's leave, consent to be his mate? Confusion choked the beauteous maid, she faltered to reply. She loved young Alfred far too well her passion to deny, and yet by modesty withheld, she scrupled to avow that love she knew not how to hide, which showed most obvious now. A happy omen, Edmund cried, as happy prove the event. Thy speechless answer almost proves that silence gives consent. If I must speak, the maid replied, and truth be forced to say, your son hath not unpleasing been to me this many a day. But little did I e'er suppose that thus his generous heart, when mine was tortured with distress, endured an equal smart. Oh, gracious heaven, the youth exclaimed, what happiness is this? Sure mortals are not oft decreed to share an equal bliss. Which most my admiration claims, which most should I approve? In this I meet paternal care, in that requited love. No more, my son, old Edmund said, thy transports now suspend. The night is far advanced, and claims that we the subject end. The thing most needful in my mind, till morning I'll revolve, and by that time expect to hear my purpose and resolve. The rosy-fingered Queen of Morn had tinged the eastern skies, ere Morpheus had removed his seals from Alfred's drowsy eyes. All glittering on the craggy cliff, the sun refulgent gleams, while winding Eden from below reflects the quivering beams. When Edmund hied him to the couch where Alfred slumbering lay, and roused him from his death-like sleep to hail the happy day. Then to the bower where sweetly slept fair Imogen he goes, and with a soft salute awakes the maid from her repose. Full gaily smiled the blushing rose, full gaily bloomed the thorn, but gayer still bloomed Imogen upon this happy morn. The new-born hopes, the pleasing thoughts that thronged her lovely breast, improved each charm, and in her eyes that secret joy confessed. Whilst Alfred, more than doubly blessed, her rising charms surveyed, with all the ecstasy of love by mutual love repaid. This common joy the sage himself seemed partially to share, and, by the present one, awhile forgets his former care. Up to the summit of the cliff the youthful pair he led, when, far extended to the view, the spacious landscape spread. Northward, in azure mists involved, the Scotian mountains rise, and southward, Cumbria's fertile plains salute the gladdened eyes. Here to the east, through fruitful vales, the Eden winds its way. There to the west, proud Solway rolls, impetuous to the sea. Here you may view the sweeping bark, swift gliding o'er the main, and there unnumbered flocks behold, that graze upon the plain. Whilst to the left, thy lofty towers, Caerlulia may be seen, and to the right, in humble style, the far-famed Gretna green. Behold where yon embattled towers majestically rise, whose lofty pinnacles appear enveloped with the skies. That noble structure once confessed De Morville for its lord, and round him numerous vassals lived, attendant on his word. Each by my mother's will to me the same obedience yields. These castles and these towers are mine, these forests and these fields. But sickened, said the good old man, with sorrow as I've been, what charms had affluence left for me who naught but woe had seen? Disgusted with the busy world, its follies and its strife, I sought for solitude, resolved with heaven to pass my life. The Abbot of St. Mary's, he has had, since that event, of all my temporal concerns the perfect management. But since my loved, my long-lost child, my life revives in thee, our worldly business must henceforth entirely altered be. Those castles and those wide domains, so bootlessly made mine, on marrying lovely Imogen, to thee I shall resign. I make no doubt I soon shall gain Sir Bernard's free consent, for cruelty it must be deemed your union to prevent. What though if she an heiress be, and he a baron brave? Thy portion shall be 3 times more than all that he can have. The extensive barony at Brough is all at thy command, with large domains in different parts of spacious Cumberland. Where yon fair column proudly braves th' insulting northern blast, thy royal grandsire Edward, he inglorious breathed his last. Encamped upon that plain he died, destruction his design, ambition marked his life. My son, let virtue temper thine. And now, my children, to Carlisle, with speed let us repair, the Father Abbot shall assist in what is wanting there. From thence the good Sir Bernard may with ease be advertised, and of our coming and design be properly apprised. For now 'tis my most ardent wish your nuptials soon to see, which I propose ere I return there solemnized shall be. Then to their route with joyous hearts set out the happy train, along the river's verdant side, and soon the abbey gain. A courier soon Sir Bernard brought, who came well pleased to learn that Imogen had rescued been, and was on her return. Nor had the fair occasion long to sue for his consent, Sir Bernard was too fond by far their union to prevent. Rejoiced, he gave his Imogen to be young Alfred's bride, and by the reverend Abbot soon the Gordian knot was tied. Next morning to De Morville's hall the party took their way, nor e'er had Brough beheld before a scene so grand, so gay. Rejoicings for a month at least on this occasion were, and at their table rich and poor most liberally did share. The sports concluded, and the guests sped each his different way. Kind Alfred sorely importuned his hapless sire to stay, but all entreaties were in vain, though each his utmost tried to tempt the solitary sire with Alfred to reside. Tenacious of his lonely life, he sought his humble cell, resolved, as he to heaven had vowed, in solitude to dwell. But as the distance was but small, he now and then would stray to Brough, and with his children there enjoy a happy day, while Alfred and his Imogen, with every comfort crowned, lived long, were happy and esteemed by all the country round. End of Part 1. Part 2 of 2 Cumberland Ballads by John Stagg. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Rose of Corby. Sweet sung the blackbird on the spray, sweet sung the lark his matin song, and sweetly sung sweet Ellen gay, as through the grove she ranged along. Fair Ellen was pronounced the rose of all the maidens far and wide. No rival beauty might propose to vie with her on Eden's side. Her sire, Sir Guilford Salkeld, was a doughty baron as might be. No neighbouring knight could him surpass in wealth throughout the north country. Nor more for wealth and valour famed, his prowess rang the country round. The brave Sir Guilford, still surnamed, for e'en at court was he renowned. Fair Ellen was his only child, now in her prime with every grace, in manners as an angel mild, whilst beauty's self sat in her face. Full many a knight of high renown and baron bold with ardour strove to win the fair one for his own, and to engage young Ellen's love. Among the undistinguished crowd of suitors that successive came, was one a knight right brave aloud, Sir Fergus Buick was his name. Great was his wealth, great was his power, in Bew his castled mansion lay, and day by day within his tower full 80 men enjoyed his pay. With ardour long his suit he pressed, implored her pity, urged his smart, but though keen passion fired his breast, no flame responsive warmed her heart. Thus unsuccessful with the dame, the sire's assistance next he sues, to him proposed his suit and aim, in hopes the boon he'd not refuse. But sordid was Sir Guilford's breast, still wishful to increase his store, and though with more than plenty blessed, yet still the baron wanted more. Lord Dacres had his love disclosed, not to fair Ellen but to her sire, to him large offers had proposed, in hopes to accomplish his desire. Their wide domains contiguous laid, Lord Dacres was of high degree, and where 1 acre Buick had, it might be said that he had 3. This with old Salkeld more prevailed than every argument beside. The suit of poor Sir Fergus failed, and Ellen's hand he was denied. But in his heart no rankling wound his unrequited love had made. There love had little entrance found, and soon that little was allayed. To Corby Castle more attached than to fair Ellen by his flame, he to her fortunes would have matched, not minding much the beauteous dame. And much the same Lord Dacres, he the lands and not the lady viewed, nor caring how her heart might be, he diligent the farther sued. Of Corby Castle once possessed, he well foresaw his rising worth, for this would make him with the rest the greatest lord in all the north. Nor was the sire less pleased to see th' increase of wealth, th' increase of power, that from this sordid union he should on his much-loved daughter shower. Sir Guilford to his daughter said, upon a lovely morn in May, "Come here, my fair, my pretty maid, I something serious have to say. You're now near 20 years of age, and in the bloom of youthful prime. 'Tis meet you with the world engage, nor longer idly waste your time. For I am old and far in years, my thread of life cannot last long, and many are a father's fears that a dear daughter may do wrong. Then, ere I sink into the grave, as heaven alone can tell how soon, of you one favour I must crave, and you must not deny the boon. You know I've been indulgent still, to you no wish have I denied, for whate'er seemed to be your will, with that was I well satisfied. So, daughter dear, with my request in gratitude you must comply. Obedience always makes me blessed, I know you cannot, won't deny. Lord Dacres is a worthy lord, he likes you well, he craves your love. I promised on a father's word, his suits my Ellen must approve. His vast domain wide round us lies, to yours this added soon shall be, and you, advanced in rank, shall rise, prime lady of the North Country. But if perversely you refuse to yield consent to my request, no, 'tis not left to you to choose, no, 'tis your father's firm behest. But, fain that tyrant word, command, would I excuse, might it be so, nor forth extend coercion's hand, to plunge a daughter into woe. But your good sense, my child, I hope, will teach obedience to my will, nor let you with my mandates cope, so trust I to your better skill. If you Lord Dacre's suit approve, then all I have is surely thine, but if you shall refuse your love, then ne'er expect a mite of mine. This is my pleasure, my request, nay more, 'tis my command to you. Think as you please, but choose the best. So spoke the Baron, and withdrew. Have you beheld a new-blown rose, when drenched by one fast-falling shower, its tints with more effect disclose, each drop improving more the flower? So looked fair Ellen, pensive, mute, the tears fast trickling o'er her cheek, to hear Lord Dacre's proxied suit, unable one short word to speak. How could she force her heart to love one scarcely seen, and quite unknown? How force her bosom to approve a flame repugnant to her own? No, 'tis not in a parent's might to force affection, fix the heart. A subtler power, with subtler sleight, alone can execute this part. Amongst the knights and barons, who so frequent throng Sir Gilbert's court, for feats of tournaments or show, to hunt the boar or other sport, though in their gaudiest suits arrayed, though numerous vassals thronged each train, though skill and valour were displayed, and courtesy of manners vain, not one, midst all this proud parade of lordly guests who forward pressed, had e'er the least impression made within fair Ellen's youthful breast, save one, a youth whose modest mien spoke no exalted rank or fame. Him oft at Corby had she seen, and Musgrave was the stripling's name. No baron he, nor baron's son, nor gartered knight of high degree, but he with Lord de Greystock won in his fair castle merrily, adorned with every courtly grace, each rare endowment he possessed. A manly beauty flushed his face, and virtue seemed to fire his breast. His grandsire, whilom the domain erst held of Gilsland, as I ween, but our 6th Harry's hapless reign the ruin of his house had been. A small reversion had been spared, whereby the family to trace, of which Lord Greystock then was ward for Musgrave, last of all his race. In him, as in the fondest sire, the youth a kind protection found, and every wish and each desire were always with indulgence crowned. A train of serving men had he, alone to serve at his command, and where his lord e'er chanced to be, was Musgrave close at his right hand. Whene'er to old Sir Guilford's hall de Greystock friendly visits paid, the younker, let what would befall, one of his party always made. Young Ellen say, young Ellen loved, the youth alone her heart possessed. His every action she approved, and that approval soon confessed. Nor unconcerned had he beheld the youthful Ellen's beauteous face. A mutual flame his breast had filled, and every thought to love gave place. But, conscious of the inferior state in which he stood, he only mourned, bewailed th' unkindness of his fate, in silence gazed, in secret burned. Full oft, to ease his lovelorn mind, an interview he sought to have, and love, to lovers ever kind, an opportunity soon gave. For, as one morn amidst the shade he ranged, deep wrapt in thoughtful love, he chanced to hear the beauteous maid, sweet singing through the echoing grove. With ardour winged, swift as a dart, the impatient lover onward hied, but love, though it o'erflowed the heart, the powers of utterance quite denied. A while in fixed amazement stood th' admiring youth, nor venturous spoke, her charms with heartfelt transport viewed, but thus at length he silence broke. Say, lady fair, what brings you here, so far, so early and alone? Quoth she, kind sir, what needs me fear? Are not these parks my father's own? Here, every morn I come to hear the lark his matin carol sing. Here, too, at evening tide repair, until the warning curfew ring. How cheering is the blackbird's song, how freshening is the vernal breeze, how glad seem all the feathered throng, whilst gaily fluttering through the trees. Fair is the landscape to the eye, and variegated is the scene. Hushed are the winds, whilst yonder sky is all unruffled and serene. There Eden rolls, majestic stream, whose course the towering cliffs o'ershade, and there Aurora's morning beam from its smooth surface is displayed. Yon rising hills, these murmuring floods, those distant towers that strike the sight, these flowery walks, those shady woods, are all conducive of delight. And then, how healthful 'tis to range, to breathe the morning-scented air! Why then, kind stranger, seems it strange that you should find me walking here? Not that I blame your walk, replies the youth. 'Tis pleasant, all must own, but what created my surprise was but in meeting you alone. And who should be my partner, pray, said she, to walk along the grove? What person fitter, lady, say than he, the happy man you love? Who is that man? Fair Ellen said. As yet I wot not, I protest. Whoe'er he be, most beauteous maid, he certes must be doubly blessed. Good heavens! Young Musgrave sighed, then hushed, on Ellen fixed his steadfast eyes, whilst o'er his cheeks the crimson flushed, and she beheld him with surprise. Why stand you thus? Said Ellen. Speak. Why fix your earnest gaze on me? Why heaves your breast? Why glows your cheeks? Say, sir, what may the matter be? Forgive, fair dame, young Musgrave cried, the emotions prudence should conceal, emotions which I cannot hide, that speak too plainly what I feel. To burn in secret, long my fate, for thee, sweet Ellen, peerless fair, but, conscious of my humble state, forbore that passion to declare. But since the long heart-buried flame that rent my breast, that made me bleed, burst forth that passion to proclaim, despair to folly must succeed. Despair? Fair Ellen straight replied. Brave men with fortune ought to cope. The adage ne'er was yet denied. Faint heart, you know the rest, then hope. But say, what pencil shall portray the altered look of Musgrave's face? No common hand the task essay, when doubt to certainty gave place. Soon each to their hearts explain, and diffidence was soon no more, nor long suspense prolonged their pain, for love had done the work before. From Greystock many a well-pleased tour to Corby, graceful Musgrave took, and oft times at the midnight hour, Leander-like he swam the brook. There with his Rose in dalliance sweet, he'd stay till grey-eyed morn appeared, then, unobserved, made his retreat, and gladsome home to Greystock steered. But when fair Ellen came to know her father's cruel, stern intent, her heart was quite o'erwhelmed with woe, and rage and fear her bosom rent. Rage, that she should be thus compelled to wed the object of her hate, but most, her breast with fears was filled, lest Musgrave were informed too late. Th' ensuing morn was to see her maid Lord Dacre's married wife. Such was her father's stern decree, and cursed must be her future life. And such was all Sir Guilford's mood, no reasoning e'er could change his mind, for, be the project bad or good, he'd do what he had once designed. His temper well fair Ellen knew, from lenity she'd naught to hope, and sure desertion must ensue, were she to hazard to elope. But then to give her willing hand to one her heart so disapproved, and for a cruel sire's command, thus to desert the man she loved. O'er each consideration weighed, but how to act she could not tell. Nice was the point, and sore afraid was she to err, though meaning well. Then she called up her trusty page, and to the varlet thus said she, "Wilt thou now, on thy oath, engage to serve me once with secrecy? An errand thou must run me straight, a letter too must take withal, and thou must neither stop nor wait till thou hast reached de Greystock's hall." Then up and spoke this trusty page, and to fair Ellen thus did say, "In what new task must I engage, that you these strict injunctions lay? Have you not found me faithful still, to run or bide at your command? Has not my pleasure been your will? Did I your bidding ever stand?" "No more," she said, "begone with speed, nor longer stop to prate, away. But as I find you shall succeed, proportioned your reward shall be." Then off with nimble feet he hied, the silver moon bestowed her light, nor stopped he once, nor turned aside, till the Greystock towers appeared in sight. And when he reached the castle gate, he boldly rung the castle bell. "Who's there?" the porter called. "That late thus rings, or what your business tell?" "Unbar the gate," the page replied. "Be quick, for I've no time to stay." "For what?" the churlish porter cried. "First, stranger, tell thy business, pray." "'Tis a fair lady's embassage that I in charge to Musgrave bear, and I must see him," said the page, "before the morning light appear." Then straight the bolts the porter drew, the page admitted through the gate, and quick to Musgrave's chamber flew, his sore-grudged errand to relate. The slumbering lover from his bed the porter roused, and led him straight to where the page all shivering stayed, impatient at the inner gate. "What is thy business?" Musgrave said. "What is thy business, friend, with me, that thus my slumbers you invade, midst dreams of such felicity?" "'Tis much," replied the witty page, "if e'er you dreamt, whilst in your bed, of things wherein you must engage, ere you again lay down your head. Here is a letter, read it straight, from that you'll learn what's to be done. For me, I may no longer wait, I must be home ere rising sun." So said the page, with speed returned, whilst Musgrave to his chamber hies, his breast with keen enquiry burned, and soon the crackling signet flies. But, as a tender scroll he read, what anxious passions thronged his breast! Love, fear, and rage, by turns invade, and sorely was the youth distressed. But not a moment now to waste was left, the time was precious grown. His servants Musgrave raised in haste, and soon his ticklish plight made known. "Attend, my gay companions all," the lovelorn anxious Musgrave said. "I've business now, it seems, will call for all your friendship and your aid. The beauteous Rose of Corby, she has sworn to be my wedded bride, but her stern father doth decree she to Lord Dacres should be tied. Tomorrow is the fated day that makes fair Ellen Dacres' wife. Then rouse, my friends, nor lingering stay, on you depends my future life. Array you in your suits of green, each with a sword and targets bright, and let us ere de Greystock ween to Corby scour ere morning light. The nearest route full well I know, no tell-tale shall our march report. In sooth, our steeds shall not be slow, we'll either make or mar some sport. With haste the ready troop obeyed, each from the stall his courser led, and soon th' adventurous cavalcade like lightning from the castle sped. Through Inglewood they took their way, o'er lofty Berwick furious ride, and long before the break of day arrive at Eden's winding side. Here in a close embowering wood they stopped a whilst breath they took, to fix on plans to be pursued before they ventured through the brook. By the Lord Harry, Musgrave said, now something desperate must be done, for oft said Ellen, beauteous maid, faint heart fair lady never won. But here awhile we may repose, till Sol yon eastern hills adorn. What would be best to do, God knows, but naught can be achieved till morn. So said, their coursers fast they tied, and down on heathy hillocks lay, resolved in silence to abide the upshot of the coming day. Forth from the east the blushing dawn o'er Hartside's heights now 'gan to glare, the lowing herds now seek the lawn, the shepherds to their pens repair. While through the grove the woodlark sings, the bleating lambkins range the hills, and welcome to the chorus rings, and smiles the face of nature fill. Up rose Lord Dacres with the day, around him thronged a numerous train of knights and squires and ladies gay, before his castle on the plain. For Corby marched the merry troop, 'twas heartfelt pleasure flushed each face, nor oft had passed so fair a group through Gilsland on so fair a case. Sir Fergus Buick by the side of Dacres rode, in cheerful glee, in armour clad with lordly pride, a gallant wight I ween was he. With numbers more in armour bright, who gaily followed in the throng, in sooth it was a glorious sight, to view them as they passed along. Scarce had the sun the hills illumined, that bound fair Cumbria on the east, before this troop, all gaily plumed, the western banks of Irthing pressed. While Corby Castle near at hand rose through the forest fair to view, when eager now the jocund band the nearly finished routes pursue. The tuneful bell with cheerful sound from Wetherill Priory hailed the train, and the re-echoing rucks resound down Eden's vale the gladsome strain. And soon arrived the cheerful band, their lengthening ranks in order drawn, in ample lines they gaily stand, extended o'er the verdant lawn. Old Salkeld hobbled to the green, and said, My friends, you're welcome all, so fair a troop I have not seen assembled ere before my hall. How fares Lord Dacres, and the rest of all his jovial company? All well, I hope, so I am blessed. Come, friends, dismount and go with me. For ere you stir or quit this ground, for Hymen's altar to proceed, the sparkling goblet shall go round, as doubtless all refreshments need. So said, the grooms the prancing steeds each led to their respective stall, whilst Dacres his companions leads to taste the cheer of Guildford's hall. Here every face with joy seemed glad, to trouble every heart unknown, save Ellen, silent she and sad, her chamber sought and sighed alone. Where is my Musgrave? cried the maid. Why comes he not with speed to me? Oh, has my secret been betrayed, or faithless can my true love be? Haste to my rescue, Musgrave, haste, or soon I am made Lord Dacres' wife, in dole my future days to waste, and be unhappy through my life. Young Musgrave heard not Ellen's moan in the green forest where he stood. Yet oft his anxious looks were thrown to Corby from the sheltering wood. He saw Lord Dacres with his train arrive upon the castle green. He saw them mustered on the plain, full sorely vexed was he, I ween. For full 500 glittering spears with Dacres came, all fair to view, their numbers raised the lover's fears, and well he wist not what to do. Here are we but a score in all, he said, and though we courage boast, my friends, our number is too small to cope with such a powerful host. Some favouring juncture I expect, kind heaven for Musgrave shall ordain. We must by stratagem effect what we by force cannot obtain. Expectant of our future state, unseen their movements we may view. The happy crisis here await that shall instruct us what to do. Whilst each of you, my trusty friends, attend me with undaunted heart, that, when kind chance the occasion lends, each may be ready for his part. And now prepare these gallants all, each to remount his mettled steed, to quit the hospitable hall, and to the abbey straight proceed. Fair Ellen on a palfrey rode, full closely by Lord Dacres' side, in garments gay, dressed à la mode, a winsome but a woeful bride. Young Musgrave viewed the cavalcade from the green forest where he lay, the host in glittering arms arrayed, and, painful sight, his Ellen gay. But say, how must his youthful heart with agonizing rage be torn to see his Rose in tears depart, and to the church triumphant borne. The temple soon the party gain, and soon the hallowed rites are o'er, when all soon quit the sacred fane, and to the hall return once more. Loud mirth now fills the festive throng, the spacious goblets stream around, the mingling laugh, the chorus song, loud through the echoing mansion sound. And every bosom seemed to share the transports of the festive morn, save Ellen, she, dejected fair, in secret wailed her lot forlorn. When loudly rung the castle bell, and loudly rung the echoing hall, for such an unexpected knell struck with surprise the strangers all. "Who's there?" the testy porter cried, "that with such vengeance dares to ring? 'Twere meet his manners he had tried, that doth such noisy errands bring." "I bear a note," one answered straight. "'Tis for fair Ellen's hand alone, and here the lady must I wait until her answer I have known." To Ellen swift the porter flies, and straight the stranger's message brought. Quick to the gate the lady flies, and from a page receives the note, with which she to her chamber flew, its contents all in haste to prove. But how was she surprised to view, subscribed, "Your Musgrave in the grove." In this he had a plan proposed, in which their mutual interest shared, a plan with which fair Ellen closed, and straight a feigned reply prepared. Then to the hall again she hied, where all the guests expectant stayed. "What is the news?" her father cried. "What was that note, my pretty maid?" "'Tis from my charming cousin Kate of Brayton Hall, who sends to me, that since she's been informed so late, she begs that she excused may be, but promises some future day, when all our bustle is got through, she'll come and at our castle stay and spend with me a week or two." So said, with her supposed reply, again she hastens to the gate. The page commands aloud to fly, and bear her scroll to cousin Kate. But at that instant from the trees, brave Musgrove and his trusty train rush forth, the trembling Ellen seize, and bear her fainting o'er the plain. Each to his courser nimbly springs, fair Ellen Musgrave rode behind. Love joined with fear supplies them wings, and off they scamper like the wind. O'er Scaleby moor their route they took, the Esk they forded one and all, nor stopped they once for burn nor brook, until they reached Gilnockie Hall. Here Johnny Armstrong held his seat, of Cumbrian marshes then the pest, and here they found a safe retreat, for here what power could them molest? The bravest baron of the north at Armstrong's name would shake with dread, for when he led his legions forth, wide terror round the country spread. For full 400 bowmen bold he constant kept within his hall, and had, as we're by story told, both horse and harness for them all. Now here a while let Musgrave stay in Eskdale with his Ellen fair. To Corby we retrace our way, and view again what's doing there. The porter from the castle gate had partly seen fair Ellen's rape, and flew like lightning to relate her capture and the foe's escape. Wild uproar through the mansion ranged, that loudly echoed with alarms. Their merriment to mourning changed, and all the place resounds to arms. To arms, to arms, Lord Dacres cried. To horse, my friends, without delay. The treason stalks my blooming bride, the Rose of Corby's snatched away. The fierce freebooters of the north, they doubtless have my Ellen ta'en. Then bravely let us sally forth, the beauteous captive to regain. Then northward these, and southward those, in sooth they wandered far and near, but of the luckless ravished Rose no tale nor tidings could they hear. For though the porter saw the train that bore the beauteous bride away, to mark the routes that they had ta'en, it seems he had no mind to stay. The band thus foiled in their pursuit, back to the castle's slow return. There, wrapped in stupid silence mute, fair Ellen's luckless fate they mourn. "'Tis strange," Sir Fergus Bewick cried, "who those bold ravishers have been, that could secure the hapless bride, and thus escape with her unseen. 'Twould seem as if from concert she had acted with the men before, for she went to the gate right free, nor her nor they have we seen more." "Now foul before thee, false Sir Knight," Lord Dacres to Sir Fergus cried. "It strikes me now that rival spite hath robbed me of my beauteous bride." Amazed, I thy indifference saw, beheld thy coolness with surprise, that could so easily withdraw thy claims from such a precious prize. Was thy pretended friendship, say, but meant to cozen me thy friend, meant to seduce my bride away, and leave thee hated in the end? Think not, Sir Fergus, thus to deal with me, as one thou wouldst despise. Dacres has a heart to feel, he has a hand that shall chastise. For wheresoe'er the charming maid thou hast concealed, or east or west, be sure that this avenging blade shall force the secret from thy breast. When thus Sir Fergus fierce replied, "Lord Dacres, you have charged me wrong. Such words suit ill a Bewick's pride. Such charges can't to me belong. Not one of all the Bewick line the name of villain ever knew, much less shall coward then combine to stigmatise our honour too. As heaven's my judge, I do aver, I never practised on your bride, nor basely would with knaves confer, your nuptials thus to set aside. No, Dacres, Bewick doth despise all falsehood, whatsoe'er its aim, as much as he thy rage defies, or values his unblemished name. Ere I, believe me on my word, to thee in point of honour yield, I'll place my life upon my sword, and try my fortune in the field. 'Tis true, I once fair Ellen loved, but soon relinquished every claim, whene'er I knew that disapproved were my addresses by the dame. Canst thou, Lord Dacres, then suppose that I could brook such villainy, to rob thee of thy rightful Rose by practices so cowardly? Ill suits it with our house's pride to be thus slandered and aspersed. Our honour has been often tried, nor was our courage thought the worse. Then think not, Dacres, I shall stand and tamely bear a villain's name. With thee I'll try my willing hand, and vindicate my injured fame." No more they chaffed with useless words, but from the hall enraged withdrew. Refulgent flashed their deadly swords, and each to each like lions flew. Sir Fergus aimed a deadly thrust at Dacres' breast. he reeled and fell, writhing with pain he bites the dust, and cursing takes his last farewell. But ere the dire vindictive wound of life that Dacres dispossessed, his falchion had a passage found deep in the brave Sir Buick's breast. Fast through the wound life's purple tide rushed forth, whilst Fergus gasped for breath. "I'm innocent," he faltering cried, then closed his glimmering eyes in death. With general consternation shook, each knight and baron stood oppressed. Wild horror stared in every look, and anger rose in every breast. When thus Sir Guilford Salkeld said unto the strangers in his hall, "'Tis I that have this ruin made, 'tis I am guilty of it all. The faults, the folly, mine are proved, the damning thought shall haunt me still. By avarice and ambition moved, I thought to force my daughter's will. But, punished in my boundless pride, whilst I that folly long may mourn, Fate all those prospects has denied, and she, my Rose, shall ne'er return. O Destiny, my child restore, her presence yet may soothe my pain. Grant me but her, I ask no more, and all that's mine is hers again." So prayed the parent in his grief, and Heaven, indulgent, heard his prayer, for soon the porter brought relief, a letter from his Ellen fair. In this for pardon much she sued, then pleaded in her own defence. The tears the father's cheeks bedewed, as he exclaimed, "Just Providence! How wise and wondrous are thy ways! Omniscient justice, power divine! Man may 1,000 projects raise, to execute alone is thine. Yes, Musgrave, thou shalt be my son, my Ellen shall be doubly dear. Fate ends what blindly I begun. The mandate let me then revere, those lands which late Lord Dacres held, to thee, brave youth, of right belonged. From them thy grandsire was expelled, and all thy house most basely wronged. But Heaven, the orphan's faithful ward, decrees that they shall yet be thine. Shall I then rashly disregard an ordinance that seems divine? Soon shall the king confirm to thee what is by legal right thy own, and I shall happily live to see myself yet happy in a son." The turns of this eventful day the wondering crowd could but admire, and each preparing for his way, begged leave they homeward might retire. "Nay, by my troth," Sir Guilford cried, "this is what must not, cannot be. A bridal I must yet provide, since one, my friends, you came to see. My daughter shall be sent for straight, and youthful Musgrave with all speed. Here in my castle shall you wait, until you see how all succeed. Meanwhile, to these two luckless lords our joint attention be preferred, and though the church no rites afford to them, yet must they be interred. That done, we here will solemnize my daughter's nuptials with all joy, and hope no accident may rise again our pleasure to destroy." Then straightway for Gilnockie Hall a trusty courier they provide, the lovely Ellen to recall, and Musgrave, now old Salkeld's pride. With ready speed the servants flew, nor lingering lagged, nor looked behind, till Armstrong's castle struck his view, near where the Esk and Liddel joined. Soon as the massy doors unbarred, the first that he discovered there was Musgrave, walking in the yard, and by his side young Ellen fair. "What news? What news?" the lady cried. "What news from Corby bringst thou me?" "Good news, fair dame," the page replied, "far better than you thought would be. Lord Dacres did Sir Fergus blame for your escape. With all his main their quarrel rose. At length they came to weapons, and they both are slain. Soon as your then afflicted sire your letter got, his tears he dried, and now avows his sole desire that you shall be young Musgrave's bride. and I am by Sir Guilford sent to hasten your return likewise, for it is now his fixed intent your nuptials there to solemnize. And Musgrave is declared the heir of all Lord Dacre's vast domains, which once his predecessors were, and which he now by right obtains. Well, thanks for thy auspicious tale, fair Ellen to the servant said. When I arrive in Eden Vale, thy tidings shall be well repaid. So said, a friendly leave they took of Armstrong and his merry band, the Scotian borders straight forsook, and post away to Cumberland. And mickle joy was there, I ween, at Corby Castle on that day, when safe returning home were seen young Musgrave and his lady gay. With cheerful glee the bells were rung, whilst transport glistened through the hall, and rich and poor and old and young at Corby found a welcome call. And long and happy lived the pair, with every bliss that reason knows, and heaven's best joys may Corby share, which yet can boast a peerless rose. End of Part 2. End of 2 Cumberland Ballads by John Stagg. Read by Phil Benson in Sydney, Australia.